The royal halls of the Valkyrian Empire were grander than anything Captain Dorian Flint had ever seen. Every corner was adorned with luminous crystals that flickered like distant stars, casting a soft, ethereal glow over high-vaulted ceilings. The walls were etched with run-ins of unknown origins, ancient and dripping with power, making even the hardiest space traveler feel insignificant in comparison. He wasn't entirely sure he belonged here, especially considering the current situation. Dorian stood at attention in the center of the throne room, which was not exactly a position he'd ever imagined himself in. He was a soldier, not a diplomat. Yet here he was, surrounded by a mixture of alien courtiers and high-ranking military officials, all of whom were sizing him up with a strange blend of curiosity and suspicion. He was an outsider, an earth-born human who'd somehow ended up saving the life of an alien queen. The Queen. Her name was Lythara, a being of radiant beauty and terrifying power, her shimmering violet skin almost glimmering beneath the throne's overhead crystal chandeliers. Her large, dark eyes were filled with unspoken secrets, and her silver blue hair cascaded down in waves like liquid starlight. Her wings, yes, wings extended gracefully behind her, elegant and fierce like a mythical creature from ancient tales. Dorian swallowed nervously as Lythara's gaze fell upon him. She wasn't smiling. In fact, her expression was unsettling, like she knew something he didn't, something dangerous. Captain Flint, her voice was melodic, but there was an underlying edge to it that made him shiver. I suppose you know why you're here. Dorian cleared his throat, trying to stay calm. I rescued you. You were stranded on the outer rim, and well, your ship was, how do I put this politely, screwed. Lythara's lips twitched upward ever so slightly. It was the closest thing to a smile he'd seen from her. But her eyes, they were still unreadable. And what do you expect in return for your heroic rescue? She leaned forward, her wings unfurling slightly, revealing their full span. The sight of them sent a shiver down Dorian's spine, beautiful, deadly, and utterly otherworldly. Dorian wasn't sure if he should just be honest or try to make a joke. Well, I figured I'd get a nice, warm thank you and maybe a free drink, he said with a grin. The courtiers around him shifted uncomfortably. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. The tension was palpable. Lythara's eyes narrowed. And you think a thank you is enough after what you did? Her voice was now lower, almost a purr, and Dorian wasn't entirely sure if it was a threat or something else. Something softer. I didn't do it for a reward, Your Highness, he said, trying to sound casual. I just did what needed to be done. And I'm happy to say you're still in one piece, which frankly is more than I can say for most of the crew I've had to save. The alien queen tilted her head, her eyes gleaming with amusement. You are a strange human, Captain Flint. She stood slowly, her wings folding with grace as she descended from her throne, gliding effortlessly toward him. It was hard to remain composed as she approached. Dorian could practically feel the heat radiating off her, even though they weren't that close. Every step she took was filled with elegance and authority, but there was something else beneath that, something that made his heart race. I can sense that you're different from the others, she murmured. You're not afraid of me, are you? Dorian chuckled nervously. I'm afraid of plenty of things, Your Highness. But no, you don't exactly scare me. Not in the way you think, at least. A slight, knowing smile tugged at the corners of Lythara's lips. She stopped just in front of him, close enough that Dorian could feel the faint warmth of her presence. He tried to keep his expression neutral, but his pulse was erratic. She was impossibly close. Too close. I wonder, she whispered, if I can tempt you, Captain Flint. Dorian blinked, caught off guard. He wasn't sure whether she was flirting with him or threatening him. Probably a little bit of both if he had to guess. Before he could respond, there was a flash of movement from behind her, a flutter of wings, and then an unexpected voice interrupted the moment. Your Majesty, we must not. Lythara raised a single hand, silencing the protest from one of her advisors, a tall, wiry Valkyrian named Xyrax, who looked far too nervous for his own good. Leave us, she said coolly, without taking her eyes off Dorian. I wish to speak with the human alone. The courtiers exchanged nervous glances, but none dared to question the queen. Xyrax gave a small, frustrated sigh, and with one last wary glance at Dorian, he shuffled away with the others in tow. The throne room was now empty, save for the two of them. Lythara stepped even closer, her breath brushing against his cheek. "Now," she said. "Where were we, Captain Flint?" Dorian's heart was pounding. He swallowed hard, staring down at her, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was this a game, a test, or something more dangerous? He barely had time to react before her hand was on his chest, her fingers light but firm as they traced the lines of his uniform. "You've intrigued me," she murmured, her voice soft but insistent. "And now I find myself curious. How much more of you do I need to explore?" Her words sent a shiver down his spine, and for a moment he was completely frozen, unable to move or speak. He was completely at her mercy. Then, before he could even think to stop it, his lips were on hers. It was a kiss of forbidden tension, a kiss that carried the weight of an entire universe's worth of questions and unspoken truths. The galaxy was at war, ancient civilizations were rising and falling, and here they were, two beings from different worlds, sharing a moment that could shatter everything. Dorian pulled back just as quickly as he had leaned in, his breath ragged. Lythara, however, remained still, her eyes darkened with something unreadable. Her wings fluttered slightly, the faintest shimmer of something that could have been longing. "Why did you stop?" she whispered, her voice trembling with something unexpected. Dorian blinked, trying to process what just happened. He was a human, for God's sake. A soldier, not some intergalactic love interest. But she wasn't just any alien queen either. She was Lythara, and their kiss, well, it could change the universe. Dorian stood frozen in the center of the throne room, the taste of Lythara's lips lingering on his own. His brain was racing, trying to comprehend the wild and sudden turn of events. He'd just shared a kiss with a powerful alien queen, one who might literally rip his heart out if she wanted to. And yet there was something far more dangerous that held him in place. Lythara slowly lifted her hand, brushing her fingers against his chest in a way that was almost tender. Her wings fluttered once, then stilled, but there was a ripple of tension in the air between them, as if the very universe was holding its breath. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence in the massive hall was thick, heavy, and unrelenting. Dorian opened his mouth. Lythara tilted her head, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth, escalated. She took a step closer, her long, shimmering form almost close enough for him to feel the heat radiating off her skin. "Captain Flint, I think you have an interesting definition of quickly." Dorian swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. I didn't plan." "You didn't plan to kiss me?" she interrupted, her eyes gleaming mischievously. "Or you didn't plan to kiss me again?" Dorian blinked at her, unsure whether she was being serious or playful. His entire body felt like it was on fire, and not the good kind. His heart was pounding, and his mind kept flashing between three very conflicting thoughts. 1, what the hell just happened? 2, I'm going to die. And 3, I think I need to kiss her again. Before he could respond, the door to the throne room slammed open, and a familiar voice broke through the tense atmosphere. "Your Majesty, this is preposterous." A tall, angular alien stormed into the room, his purple skin shimmering in the light. He had 3 arms and 1 too many sharp teeth for comfort. This was Xirax, Lythara's ever-anxious military advisor, who looked about ready to burst a blood vessel at the sight of the human and the queen, so close together. "Your Highness," he panted, "the council will hear of this. It's scandalous." Dorian shot a glance at Lythara, who looked like she was trying to hold back laughter. She didn't even flinch as Xirax grunted. "Oh, Xirax," she said, her voice smooth, "you always seem so concerned about what the council might say. But I care only about what I want, do I not?" Xirax's face turned a shade darker. His many eyes flicked between them, and he fidgeted nervously. But... "Leave us," Lythara said with a flick of her hand, her tone suddenly sharp. I have no time for your absurdities today. Zyrax blinked at her, stunned into silence for a moment before his mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. But now, Lythara commanded, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. Zyrax took one last look at Dorian and the Queen, then turned and exited, grumbling about outrageous human affairs as he left the room. As the door slammed shut behind him, Lythara let out a long, amused sigh. Much better, she said with a contented smile, turning back to Dorian, who was still trying to piece his thoughts together. So, where were we? She asked, her eyes gleaming with mischief. Dorian was pretty sure his brain had short-circuited. I think we should slow down, Your Highness, he stammered. I mean, I just saved your life. I didn't expect you to. To what? Lythara interrupted, taking another step toward him. To kiss you? You saved my life, Captain Flint? That doesn't mean we're going to sit around and pretend that something electric didn't happen between us. Dorian felt his palms grow sweaty. Electric. She grinned. Oh, didn't you feel it? That little zap of energy that passed between us the moment our lips met. You're human. You're not familiar with it, but I am. Our kiss was, well, let's just say it's more than just chemistry. It's cosmic. Cosmic? Dorian raised an eyebrow. You can't just throw around space metaphors when you're talking about kissing a human. That's... Lythara lifted her hand, her fingers brushing lightly against his jaw. The touch was so soft that it made his heart skip a beat. Trust me, she whispered, leaning in so close that their noses brushed. You didn't just kiss a queen, Captain Flint. You kissed the one who holds the key to untold powers, and that kiss, it may very well change everything. Dorian blinked, trying to process what just happened. He was a human, for God's sake. A soldier, not some intergalactic love interest. But she wasn't just any alien queen, either. She was Lythara. And their kiss, well, it could change the universe. And that was just the beginning. Dorian stood frozen in the center of the throne room, the taste of Lythara's lips lingering on his own. His brain was racing, trying to comprehend the wild and sudden turn of events. He'd just shared a kiss with a powerful alien queen, one who might literally rip his heart out if she wanted to. And yet there was something far more dangerous that held him in place. Lythara slowly lifted her hand, brushing her fingers against his chest in a way that was almost tender. Her wings fluttered once, then stilled, but there was a ripple of tension in the air between them, as if the very universe was holding its breath. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence in the massive hall was thick, heavy, and unrelenting. Dorian opened his mouth, but all that came out was a strangled, well, that escalated quickly. Lythara tilted her head, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. Escalated? She took a step closer, her long, shimmering form almost close enough for him to feel the heat radiating off her skin. Captain Flint, I think you have an interesting definition of quickly. Dorian swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. I didn't plan. You didn't plan to kiss me, she interrupted, her eyes gleaming mischievously. Or you didn't plan to kiss me again? Dorian blinked at her, unsure whether she was being serious or playful. His entire body felt like it was on fire, and not the good kind. His heart was pounding, and his mind kept flashing between three very conflicting thoughts. 1. What the hell just happened? 2. I'm going to die. And 3. I think I need to kiss her again. Before he could respond, the door to the throne room slammed open, and a familiar voice broke through the tense atmosphere. Your Majesty, this is preposterous. A tall, angular alien stormed into the room, his purple skin shimmering in the light. He had 3 arms and 1 too many sharp teeth for comfort. This was Zyrax, Lythara's ever-anxious military advisor, who looked about ready to burst a blood vessel at the sight of the human and the queen, so close together. Your Highness, he panted, the council will hear of this. It's scandalous. Dorian shot a glance at Lythara, who looked like she was trying to hold back laughter. She didn't even flinch as Zyrax ranted. Oh, Zyrax, she said, her voice smooth. You always seem so concerned about what the council might say. But I care only about what I want, do I not? Zyrax's face turned a shade darker, his many eyes flicked between them, and he fidgeted nervously. But. Leave us, Lythara said with a flick of her hand, her tone suddenly sharp. I have no time for your absurdities today. Zyrax blinked at her, stunned into silence for a moment before his mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "But now," Lythara commanded, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. Zyrex took one last look at Dorian and the Queen, then turned and exited, grumbling about outrageous human affairs as he left the room. As the door slammed shut behind him, Lythara let out a long, amused sigh. "Much better," she said with a contented smile, turning back to Dorian, who was still trying to piece his thoughts together. "So, where were we?" she asked, her eyes gleaming with mischief. Dorian was pretty sure his brain had short-circuited. I think we should slow down, Your Highness," he stammered. "I mean, I just saved your life. I didn't expect you to." "To what?" Lythara interrupted, taking another step toward him. "To kiss you. You saved my life, Captain Flint. That doesn't mean we're going to sit around and pretend that something electric didn't happen between us." Dorian felt his palms grow sweaty. "Electric?" She grinned. "Oh, didn't you feel it? That little zap of energy that passed between us the moment our lips met. You're human. You're not familiar with it, but I am. Our kiss was, well, let's just say it's more than just chemistry. It's cosmic." "Cosmic?" Dorian raised an eyebrow. "You can't just throw around space metaphors when you're talking about kissing a human. That's... Lythara lifted her hand, her fingers brushing lightly against his jaw. The touch was so soft, but it made his heart skip a beat. "Trust me," she whispered, leaning in so close that their noses brushed. "You didn't just kiss a queen, Captain Flint. You kissed the one who holds the key to untold powers. And that kiss, it may very well change everything." Dorian blinked, momentarily stunned by her words. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could say anything more, a sharp chime echoed through the room. The sound was so sudden and loud it made both of them jump apart. "What?" Dorian glanced toward the source of the noise. Lythara turned with a sigh, waving her hand. "It's just the Council's emergency summons. They've been expecting me to speak with them for some time. They'll be furious if I delay." She seemed reluctant to break eye contact with Dorian. He felt that same pull, like gravity was trying to drag him closer to her, even though every rational part of him screamed that this wasn't a good idea. But before they could speak further, the door opened again, and a voice called out from the hallway. "Your Majesty, the Council demands your presence immediately. There are urgent matters to discuss." Lythara growled softly under her breath, frustration clear on her features. She glanced at Dorian, then back at the door. "I'll deal with them," she said, her voice tinged with annoyance. Dorian felt the tension between them, thick as a nebula. He swallowed hard, feeling like he was caught between a supernova and an asteroid field. "Yeah, okay, I mean, go ahead, your head. I'll just be here, I guess." Dorian blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" She stepped closer, her wings almost brushing against his arms. "Your species is unique in many ways. And it's not just your ability to adapt to extreme environments or your technological advancements. There's something about your spirit, your energy. It's unpredictable, wild, and far more powerful than you realize. It needs you, Dorian Flint, because together we have a chance to harness this power, this bond, before it consumes us." Dorian frowned, still trying to wrap his head around the fact that this had become his life now. "And how exactly do you plan to harness this cosmic bond?" Lythara tilted her head slightly, her wings fluttering. "I'm not entirely sure yet, but we'll need to embark on a quest to find the lost oracle. The oracle is said to possess Zara's knowledge of ancient cosmic bonds. We'll need it to figure out how to stabilize our connection." Dorian groaned inwardly. "A quest? Of course, because nothing ever gets solved without a good old-fashioned quest." Lythara laughed softly, the sound musical and light. "I can tell you're not thrilled about the idea, but if we don't find the oracle, the only alternative is to sever the bond, and that would require—" Wait, Dorian interrupted. "You can't just sever it. I mean, you're a queen. You've got all this cosmic power. Can't you just, I don't know, snap your fingers and make it go away?" The Queen sighed. "I wish it were that simple, Captain Flint, but severing the bond isn't a clean process. It could destroy us both, and more than that, could tear the fabric of the universe itself." Dorian rubbed his temples. This was so much to take in. He was trying to be a soldier, a human soldier, not a cosmic pawn, and yet here he was, tangled in some kind of intergalactic mess that was bound to get him killed or worse. "Okay, so the lost oracle," he muttered, "and I guess we have no choice but to find it, right?" Lythara smiled. correct. We must find the Oracle, and quickly. The more time we waste, the more unstable our bond becomes." Dorian gave her a sidelong glance. "So what you're saying is that I'm stuck with you forever?" Lythara's smile widened. "Oh, Captain Flint, forever might be a long time, but for now, yes, you and I are bound together." Dorian sighed, his shoulders slumping as he glanced up at the high, vaulted ceiling of the throne room. "Well, this is going to be interesting." Lythara stepped closer to him, her eyes locking with his. "One more thing, Captain Flint. There's something you should know." Dorian tilted his head. "What's that?" She leaned in, her lips brushing his ear as she whispered, "If we fail, if we can't stabilize this bond, it won't just be your life at risk. The fate of your entire species could be sealed." Dorian shuddered. No pressure then. Chapter 5. The quest begins. The next morning, Dorian was suited up in the Starling, his sleek, high-tech ship. He was used to dealing with space missions, but this was something else entirely. A quest to save the universe. It felt like the beginning of a bad holovid. Lythara had already arrived, gliding onto the ship in her regal attire, her wings folded neatly behind her. There was an aura of quiet determination about her, as if she had done this kind of thing 100 times before. She was a queen after all. She was used to controlling the fates of planets and empires. But today she seemed different, less confident, more vulnerable. "You ready?" Dorian asked, trying to mask the anxiety in his voice. Lythara gave him a small nod. "The Oracle is located in the Nebula of Time, a place where the lines between past and future blur. It won't be easy to reach." Dorian took a deep breath, checking the ship's systems. Nothing easy ever is. And with that, the Starling lifted off from the Valkyrian palace, leaving the planet behind as they headed into uncharted space. The stars stretched out before them, cold and indifferent, as Dorian and Lythara embarked on a journey that could either save the universe or tear it apart. The stars were bright in the black void of space, but nothing quite prepared Dorian for the spectacle that awaited them as they approached the Nebula of Time. It was a swirling mass of color and light, a cosmic whirlpool of blues, purples, and golds, as if the very fabric of the universe had been ripped open and spilled out in a kaleidoscope of energy. The nebula stretched out before them like a living thing, pulsing, shimmering, alive with ancient power. The Starling shook slightly as it entered the outer edge of the nebula, the atmosphere inside the cloud vibrating with an electric charge that made the hairs on the back of Dorian's neck stand on end. He glanced at Lythara, seated in the co-pilot's chair beside him, her wings resting quietly against her back. She was calm, too calm, considering the situation. She seemed like she'd navigated through cosmic anomalies like this one a dozen times before. "Should I be concerned that the ship's shaking like this?" Dorian asked, gripping the control panel a little tighter. Lythara's lips curled into a small smile. "You can be concerned if you like, but it's merely the nebula reacting to our presence. It is said that time behaves differently here. The very laws of reality shift, making it unpredictable." Dorian grunted. Unpredictable didn't exactly make him feel better. But this was the only way to find the Oracle. He couldn't turn back now, even though every instinct told him he was flying straight into the unknown. The Starling slipped deeper into the nebula, the colors outside the window intensifying as they passed through thick layers of cosmic dust and radiant gases. For a moment the ship was plunged into darkness, only to emerge again into a dizzying swirl of light. Stars twisted and bent around them, shifting as though they were alive and playing a game with the laws of physics. "This is incredible," Dorian murmured, unable to tear his eyes away from the ever-changing vista. Lythara glanced at him. Incredible is one word for it. She seemed strangely distant, her expression unreadable. Dorian couldn't help but notice the tension in her posture. The closer they got to the heart of the nebula, the more intense the energy seemed to become, like a pressure building up around them. "I've only been to the core of the nebula once," Lythara said, her voice soft. "It's dangerous. Time shifts here, Captain Flint. We may encounter versions of ourselves from different moments in the past or future. The Oracle is elusive, but it will test us both." Dorian's stomach turned at the thought of running into himself, or something like him. The idea of meeting a future version of himself, or worse, an alternate reality version, made his head spin. "And what exactly is this Oracle supposed to be?" he asked, trying to push past his growing unease. "Some kind of cosmic librarian who can fix all our problems." Lythara shook her head. The Oracle is far older than I am, older than even the Vocarians. It's said to be a being of pure knowledge, capable of seeing through time and space and understanding the hidden currents of the universe. It knows the paths of the stars and can reveal the way to fix our situation. Dorian nodded, not quite understanding the full extent of what she meant. He'd never been the spiritual type. Hell, he barely believed in anything that wasn't backed up by a solid scientific theory. But right now, in the heart of a nebula where the very fabric of reality was tearing at the edges, maybe there was some truth to the mystical side of things. He had no other choice but to believe it. "Are you okay?" he asked after a beat. Lythara's wings were pressed tightly against her back now, and she looked tense, almost anxious. Lythara blinked, startled out of her thoughts. "I'm fine. I'm just sensing the currents of time here. It's unsettling." "Yeah, I can imagine," Dorian muttered, taking a deep breath. He glanced out the window. "I still don't see any sign of the Oracle. Should we be looking for something?" Before Lythara could answer, the ship jolted hard. Alarms blared, and the lights inside the starling flickered wildly as the ship shuddered. "What the hell was that?" Dorian shouted, wrestling with the controls as the ship went into a tailspin, spiraling through the clouds of the nebula. Lythara's voice was sharp with authority as she leapt into action, grabbing the secondary control panel. "Hold on, Captain. We're being pulled into a temporal rift. It's..." A sudden flash of light burst through the viewport. A figure appeared in the center of the nebula, floating among the stars. The being was a translucent silhouette, glowing with an otherworldly radiance. Its shape shifted, as if it was made of light and shadow at once. It was there, yet not there, impossible to fully comprehend. Dorian's heart skipped a beat. "Is that the Oracle?" Lythara narrowed her eyes at the figure, clearly trying to make sense of it herself. "I think it is." The figure's form flickered and shimmered, like a mirage caught in the cosmic wind. It was both male and female, neither old nor young, and had an aura of ancient wisdom that seemed to transcend physical appearance. It spoke, but its voice was not a sound, it was a feeling, an echo in the very air around them. "You are lost," the Oracle's voice whispered, a symphony of distant stars and unspoken truths. "But you are not alone. You have come to seek answers, but are you prepared for what you will find?" Dorian's breath caught in his throat. "Oh well, we're here, aren't we?" He tried to keep his voice steady, but there was a tremor beneath his words. Lythara stepped forward, her wings unfurling as she addressed the Oracle with respect. "We seek to understand the bond between myself and Captain Flint. We need your guidance to stabilize the energy before it consumes us and everything else." The Oracle shimmered. "The bond you speak of is deeper than you understand. It is written in the stars, woven into the very fabric of time. To sever it, to control it, would require a sacrifice. The future, the past, and the present are all intertwined, but the price is great. Are you willing to pay it?" Dorian exchanged a glance with Lythara. A sacrifice. He wasn't sure if this oracle was just being cryptic for fun, or if it was trying to warn them about something far more dangerous. "What kind of sacrifice?" Lythara asked, her voice steady but with an underlying tension. The oracle's form shifted, and then a vision bloomed before them, flashes of different timelines, of planets burning, of stars collapsing, and of strange, alternate versions of themselves, some dead, some victorious, some intertwined in ways they couldn't fully comprehend. "Only by giving up what you hold most dear will you find balance," the oracle said. "Your bond is powerful, but it is not without consequence. You must decide, what will you sacrifice to save the future?" Dorian's mind reeled. What could they possibly have to sacrifice? What could they afford to lose? Lythara's wings drooped slightly as she whispered, "I don't know what the oracle means by sacrifice." "I can't." Dorian cut her off. "We can't just give up. We'll figure it out." But deep down, Dorian couldn't shake the feeling that the oracle was offering them more than just guidance. It was asking them to make an impossible choice. And the weight of that choice was about to fall on them both. The oracle's form shimmered before them, its otherworldly presence filling the ship with an eerie light. For a moment, the weight of its words settled over Dorian like a heavy shroud. The future, the past, the present, everything was intertwined, and the price they would have to pay to stabilize the cosmic bond between him and Lythara was looming before them like a dark, hungry void. "What does it mean?" Dorian asked, his voice a little shakier than he intended. He tried to steady his breathing, and this was supposed to be a mission. He was supposed to be the one in control, but now he was standing at the edge of the universe, facing an incomprehensible force that spoke in riddles and offered only vague threats of sacrifice. Lythara was silent for a long moment, her wings folded tightly against her back, and her usual confident demeanor was now stripped away, leaving her vulnerable, almost fragile. "I don't know," she said quietly. "I don't know what it's asking of us, Dorian." The oracle's form flickered again, its ethereal voice echoing in the ship's cabin. "Time is but a fragile thread. You, Dorian Flint, are connected to this thread in ways you cannot yet comprehend. The kiss you shared with Lythara was more than a simple merging, it was an act that created a new reality, a potential future where both of you are bound together. But the balance is fragile. To save the universe, you must decide what to sacrifice." Dorian stared at the oracle, his mind spinning. His heart thudded in his chest as he glanced at Lythara. She looked just as lost as he felt, but something was shifting between them, an unspoken understanding, a sense of shared responsibility. "Wait," Dorian said, raising a hand. "What happens if we don't make this sacrifice? What happens if we just let things go?" The oracle's form rippled, its glowing tendrils of light swirling around them, painting the walls of the starling with strange patterns. "The universe will unravel," the oracle intoned. "The bond you share is a necessary one, but it must be tempered with loss. If you choose to fight the inevitable, the very fabric of existence will tear apart. The stars will die, worlds will fall, and both of you will cease to exist in any form, even as echoes in the void." Dorian felt cold sweat prickle at the back of his neck. He glanced at Lythara again, seeing the same mixture of determination and fear in her eyes. "But if we choose to sacrifice something," Dorian said, his voice barely above a whisper, "what do we lose?" Lythara swallowed, clearly struggling with the weight of the question. "Everything," she murmured. The oracle's voice was soft now, almost comforting. "Not everything, Your Majesty, but something precious. To bind your fates together and stabilize this bond, one of you must be willing to give up what you hold most dear. Whether it is power, love, or the very essence of your existence, only then will the bond become permanent and secure." Dorian's stomach twisted. The oracle wasn't making this easy. He was no fool. This wasn't just about love or sacrifice. It was about survival. The universe itself was on the line. He turned to Lythara, his heart pounding. "Lythara," he said softly, "what will you give up?" Lythara looked at him with a strange intensity. Her violet eyes seemed darker, more haunted than they had been before, as if she was already mourning the loss of something she had yet to give away. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her throat tightened, and she took a step back, as if the weight of the choice was too much to bear. Finally, she spoke, her voice hoarse. I don't know if I can make this choice, Dorian. My people, my empire, they depend on me. I cannot lose everything I am, but if I have to make the sacrifice to save the universe, I'll do it." Dorian's heart clenched. He knew what this meant. He understood. She was willing to give up everything, her empire, her power, even her identity, to protect him, to protect the universe. And he couldn't let that happen. The universe. Lythara's eyes shimmered with a mixture of sorrow and understanding. "Dorian, the oracle's path doesn't leave us any other choice." "If I have to give up everything, I'll do it gladly." Dorian shook his head. "No, I'm the one who needs to make the sacrifice." He paused, taking a deep breath. For the first time in his life, he was making a decision that went beyond duty, beyond logic. He was choosing to give up something he had always fought for his very existence. I don't know how, but I have to make the choice, Dorian said, his voice breaking as he looked at Lythara. I have to be the one to give up me. Lythara's expression crumpled, her wings folding in against her sides, her posture broken. Dorian, she whispered. Choose, the oracle intoned softly, its voice a caress, but with an undeniable weight behind it. Make your choice now and save the universe, or watch it burn. There was a long silence. Dorian's entire body felt like it was shaking from the gravity of what he was about to do. He turned to the oracle and spoke the only words that felt right. Let me go. I will give up my existence, my memories, my life, everything so that Lythara and the universe can be saved. The ship shook violently as if the universe itself was reacting to his words. The oracle's light flickered, then dimmed. So be it, it whispered. And then everything went silent. Chapter 8. Dorian's vision blurred as he felt his body disintegrate, a million points of light scattering in every direction. Time seemed to slow. He felt the memories of his life, his adventures, his mistakes, his triumphs fade away like distant echoes. His memories of Lythara, their bond, their struggles were slipping through his mind like sand in the wind. And yet, even as his identity crumbled, he felt no fear. He felt peace. His last thought was of Lythara, her fierce determination, her beautiful wings, her unyielding strength. And then there was nothing. Epilogue, the Queen alone. Lythara stood alone in the heart of the nebula, the ship silent around her. The oracle had vanished, taking Dorian with it. She blinked, feeling the emptiness where his presence used to be. He was gone. She could feel it deep in her bones. He was truly gone. She had held on to hope, clinging to the belief that Dorian would survive, that the bond they shared would be enough. But now there was only silence. And then slowly the nebula's light began to shift, its colors changing, settling into a calmer rhythm. The stars, once on the verge of collapse, seemed to steady themselves, their light growing steady once more. Lythara looked up at the sky, her wings unfurling in the soft cosmic winds. She had lost him, but in the end it had been worth it. The universe will continue, she whispered to the stars, her voice a bittersweet echo. But you, Dorian Flint, you will live on in my heart. As she stood there, staring into the swirling mass of time and space, Lythara knew one thing for certain: she would never get the human who had saved her. And somehow, in some far-flung corner of the universe, she felt his presence still. Not in body, but in the very energy of the stars themselves.